Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Plain Talks. I shared a post about my favorite books from last year, and I'm really proud to have another one of those authors with me, Bill Price, president of Driva Solutions, a boutique consultancy in customer experience and service, who's also the co-founder of Linebridge Global Alliance, and of course the author of the Frictionless Organization. Bill, welcome to Plain Talks.
Thank you, Tarv. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for inviting me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, your
Sure.
background, and how you came to write the Frictionless Organization.
Oh, happy to do that. I've got my career is a combination of management consulting and being a customer service, customer experience executive at different companies. So my early career, McKinsey and Company, and then I moved into become a CFO for a startup company in the customer experience technology space, customer service technology space. We were bought by MCI, a telco in the United States. And after that, I found myself interviewing with Jeff Bezos, became the first worldwide VP of customer service at Amazon. And after that, thought I'd form my own company doing some pretty cool technology. The timing wasn't right, so I decided to do some consulting, built this consulting firm that you mentioned, Driva Solutions, and our Linebridge partners around the world. So we do work with mainly large companies that have gnarly problems that need a little bit of extra horsepower, some analytical support, and some best practice. We bring in a lot of industry best practice from different places where we've worked and where we've done consulting around the world.
You mentioned Jeff Bezos there and actually being the first VP of customer service. What was that like? When was that?
Early 1999, I joined. Shortly after the company had gone public and had just begun operations in Slough, England, and in Regensburg, Germany. So it was primarily still US based. It was small-ish. I mean, only 2 warehouses in the United States. I think there are 400 today in the United States. So it was small, but growing very, very fast. It was exciting. We were, as Jeff used to say, and everyone used to mimic, we were making history, because there really wasn't a playbook for building an online platform that could scale that huge, nor build a customer experience ethos that was that comprehensive. I mean, Jeff kept saying he wanted Amazon to be Earth's most customer-centric company, and he refused to define that. It was just one of these way out there expressions, but we all felt it. And finally, he defined it very simply as you have to listen to the customer, but you also have to invent for the customer. And it was a really delicate balance that he was always seeking. If you invent too much, customers don't know what you're doing and they get scared or they won't come on board. But if you only listen to them, that's like the rear view mirror. You've got to go and have that balance of invention, creativity, and listening closely. So it was exciting. I had a great team of folks working for me in customer service, but also a great team of colleagues, all of whom banded together to make sure that we aim to become Earth's most customer-centric company.
23 years ago, listening to the customer,
Yep.
being user-centric, customer-centric, human-centric, which is an approach that all companies take today. So it's fascinating, and obviously the results speak for themselves. But I mean, tell me about the journey, whether it be at Amazon or any other company that you've worked at, in terms of bringing all that material together for the Frictionless Organization. How do you get to understand that not just the what,
Right.
but the why on delivering a great customer experience?
Well, I'll give you an example that goes back before Amazon and was really part of what I brought into Amazon when I joined the company in '99. That was back at MCI. So MCI was at the time a startup telco, actually helped to topple the monopoly that was AT&T at the time. And it was a very fast-moving company, making lots of decisions, making some mistakes, failing quickly, moving ahead quickly. A wonderful place to work. And I worked in the business side of MCI, working with business customers. The consumer side did something that I thought was really quite extraordinary, and even to this day is pretty amazing. If you signed up for a dialing plan, let's say back then, that required an extra contract if you wanted international calling, and if MCI detected that if you never used international calling, if you never really used that plan, it actually canceled the contract for you, refunded 2 months to you, and literally called you up and said, we realize, Tarv, that you haven't used this plan. It's been in place for about 9 months. You did initially, but you haven't used it for a long time. We've gone ahead and canceled it on your behalf. If you want to reinstate it, let us know. But we just want to make sure we're looking out for you. Well, most companies would just keep that going, even if the customer's not using the plan or the extra feature, because they're getting revenue out of it. They're getting profitable revenue because they're not even having to put any expense against it. In some cases, the MCI customer said, oh, no, my kid's going back to school in England, or my wife is traveling again, and I want to restore that in another month. Thank you for looking out for me, but put it back. But in most cases, it was, I only needed it for a while, and I forgot that it was there. So a frictionless organization anticipates what would happen when that customer realizes after some months that they're paying for something that they're not using. And it winds up anticipating it and becomes preemptive or proactive to figure out how to make it less of a pain for the customer.
So anticipating what's going to happen is a lot easier today with the amount of data that we have available. Yes. And obviously the computational costs going down, and we talk about artificial intelligence, but you're talking about a time where it maybe wasn't as easily available as it is today. So how did customers become that forward-thinking, customer-centric back then?
I think for MCI it was partly because it was the startup that needed to break into an established industry that AT&T had dominated for 100 years. For Amazon, it was a startup that was creating a whole new category. And in both cases, the idea was we better hold on to these customers. And in a way, I think, Tarv, they both said, and other companies that are frictionless say, we're lucky to have these customers. They're important for us. And so let's really pay attention to them. Let's not treat them as just cogs in the wheel that can be replaced. We have to really treat them as precious assets to our overall success. And for MCI, it was every time we lost a customer, we'd have to go out there and fight and bring a new one in and pay for it and figure out how to retain them. So it's easier to retain them than it is to try to bring one back again. Another quick story from Amazon, very quick one. My first Christmas there, my first holiday there, we were just slammed with orders and slammed with business, all sorts of reasons I can get into if we have more time. But it was quite possible we were going to miss the delivery for certain orders before the holiday. An important concept here, Tarv, is that at Amazon, taking an order was called a promise. We felt that it was a promise that we would make to you, that we would get it to you on time. And so one of our marketing leads got together with me, a marketing director got together with me, and we wrote an email to all the customers we thought were not going to get their products by Christmas, by the holiday. And we said, hey, you can click here and cancel your order, no problem. We'll keep looking for you, and we'll make every effort to get it to you by the holiday, but it may not make it. That was about 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas. We had that much of a line of sight. The response was outstanding. A third of the customers said, okay, I'll cancel. I really want to get this elsewhere. A third said, there's no way I'm going to get this anywhere else. Keep looking for more. But importantly, a third said, this is not a Christmas present. This is actually for my son's birthday in January. So as long as you get it to me by January, thank you. The subsequent purchase rate of all 3 of those categories that got that letter was tremendous. They stayed with us at Amazon. They bought more than a control group because they knew we were looking out for them. So it really is a matter where today you do have AI, you've got predictive technology and predictive analytics that can do that for you. Unfortunately, many companies don't even take advantage of it today, but there are examples after examples we talk about in the book of companies that have done it over time, and that's what we exhort them or encourage companies to think about doing.
Being able to take data and understand an experience of a customer is great. What about being able to actually get customer feedback? I mean, as humans, we are very quick to be able to give feedback for experiences that haven't maybe been great, not as much where we've had amazing experiences,
Right.
Is that true? And how do you help encourage customers to actually give more feedback on, to be able to understand how to improve that experience, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's a well-known fact, but not discussed enough, that surveys tend to be biased on the low end, meaning the low scores. That customers who are frustrated take a little time to give a low score on the Net Promoter Score survey, or a customer sat survey, or a customer effort survey, whatever that survey might be, or an intercept. If you catch them in a store, if you catch them somewhere and you ask them with a tablet in front of you, how was your experience today? They're going to tend to remember the negative stuff. They're not going to remember the positive stuff as much. And so there are a couple ways to do this. Well, one is to literally reach out to those customers that have been silent for a long time, and to reach out to them. We sometimes think in business that customers that don't contact us, that don't complain, are actually happy. But in many cases, they are all equally upset, but they just didn't bother to contact you, or they didn't bother to send you some information. Some of them are happy, and you want to hear about the positive experiences as well. I think in both cases, when you conduct surveys, or when you reach out to customers, when you encourage them for surveys and get feedback, when they contact you in a customer service center or in a retail shop, whatever it might be, it's always important to go down 1 or 2 levels below the score and say, well, why or why not? If they gave a 1 for Net Promoter Score, which is really low, a deep detractor, well, why is it? What did we do? What did we do wrong? We want to try to fix this. But most companies don't bother to ask if a customer gave a 9 or a 10, the highest score for a Net Promoter, or a 7 out of 7 on a Likert scale for a survey, or a this was effortless score. They don't ask, well, what was it that we did? Sometimes it's hard for the customer to articulate it, but it's important, because maybe they'll say, well, I was expecting such and such, and you didn't make me do that. Or you pre-filled a form for me. You made it easy for me because I didn't have to fill in this form again. Or when I talked to your IVR system and I said something, the agent knew what it was when I went through. I didn't have to repeat myself. So you wind up getting a reinforcement of why it is that customers were defining frictionless in their terms. And it's going to be different for every customer. So I think it's an area we talk about in the last chapter of the book, which we call Learn. How do you learn from customers? How do you put it in these different categories, and then dig down beneath the simple scores to figure out what are you going to do to sustain it, or what are you going to do to fix it?
What does frictionless mean? I mean, obviously, it's a great title, and it will probably mean different things to different people. But what does it mean to an organization to be frictionless?
Yeah, I think we defined it a couple of different ways, and I've heard it rephrased in various discussions that I've had in the last 6 months since the book came out. I think frictionless is quite simply the absence of friction, meaning the absence of interruptions to dealing with the organization. That's one sort of simplistic definition. Number 2 is frictionless is stuff that works right. And it's not much more complex than that. Stuff that works right, that's simple, that's clear, that doesn't require extra effort by the customer to determine what to do. And that could be from the sales process, through the usage process, through a return if that's required in that business, and then the overall experience with it on an ongoing basis. And then the third definition of frictionless is where it requires less effort within the organization to handle certain issues. So we talk about the rate of contacts for an assisted contact. And the idea here is to collect not just the complaints that might come into a call center, but also that might come in at a retail shop, or when a sales in a business environment where someone is in a sales role, or a technician comes out to the home to repair a service. Try to collect all those different areas, and then add to it social media, and add to it other ways where customers are able to give feedback, and figure out, is the rate of contacts going down? That would indicate being frictionless. The rate of contacts, meaning the total contacts divided by, let's say, the number of interactions, the number of orders, the number of customers you might have, the number of embedded base units that you have. So as a quick example, we work with a company that was in the cable industry, and they had 10 different set-top boxes for TV and for internet service. And on average, their default rate, or their error rate was, let's say, 10. I'll just make up a number, but it ranged from 1 to 50, meaning some of the boxes were working really well, and some were failing much more frequently. And so what they did was they wound up eliminating those high failure boxes, and that brought the average down from 10 to a much lower number. And they kept pushing that down to the point where they went from a whole range of boxes down to just 2. 2 reliable boxes that made it easier. And so they could test that over time by seeing that the rate of contacts went down. And so those are 3 definitions of frictionless that we sort of permeate through stories in the book.
Anybody watching this right now might be saying to themselves, well, yeah, we're pretty frictionless. We've got a great experience for our customers. How can somebody go about testing if they are frictionless? Mm-hmm. And what are the rewards of becoming frictionless for an organization?
Yeah, the testing it is really, it's on the one hand it's simple, but then it's a little bit tricky. So let me define what I mean by that, and then I'll talk about the rewards next. So the first one is to start collecting those rate scores. In other words, collect the total number of contacts. Start with a contact center or call center if you've got that, or talk about any other assisted contacts that might come in a retail channel or sales channel or support channel like field support, and then divide those contacts over time by the number of, again, the number of orders or customers. We ideally want to break that down by issue or by reason, because some reasons are actually pretty positive in the customer's mind. They're valuable. Most of them, though, do represent mistakes or defects and really need to be coming down. The rate needs to go down. So collect those rate numbers and go down. And if it is going down, good. At least that's initial evidence that says it's getting better. Then secondly, test the survey data or the customer feedback in terms of what they're saying, in terms of how easy it is to work with the customer. And thirdly is to look at customer turnover or churn or customer repurchase rates, as I mentioned in the Amazon example for the holiday letter that we sent out to them, the promise letter. And that is to say, find out whether the rate of those issues are going up or not from the customer over time. You can hear it oftentimes with customers. So when you listen to recorded calls or actually listen to them real time, look at chat sessions, listen to the issues that go through with an email. You'll find out whether there is frustration. The last thing I'll mention in terms of frictionless is look at what we call the success rate or the containment rate or the FCR. So a lot of companies have moved to using AI chatbots and other forms of upfront technology and digital solutions. And they pride themselves with saying we had a success rate of 35%, meaning 35% of the customers that attempted something on our chatbot were successful. But what that totally means is 65% was a failure. And I totally would refute that 35% is a good number and that should be touted by the company. The number should be and needs to be much, much higher than that. For first contact resolution in a contact center, most companies like to say, well, we have an FCR of 77%. But that's a 23% failure rate. So always look at the failure rate and see what that is telling you. And in fact, I've got a new post coming out soon that says, why isn't your FCR 100%? Any reason below 100% is a failure point that needs to be fixed. It represents friction. And so all those different data points I gave you, the CPX, the contacts per X number, the customer sentiment when they contact you, and then look at failure rate as kind of a straightforward item. Very few companies have an FCR above 90%, but it really ought to be 100%. If not, everything below that represents a failure. The reward is customer retention, repurchase rates, positive statements that they make to their friends and family, which in turn leads to additional revenue and support, lower costs, lower support costs, and lower what we call downstream costs, meaning costs to try to fix a problem. So if a product arrives late, for example, then or comes delayed or comes broken, the company has to go fetch it, bring it back, send out a replacement. All those costs really add up significantly. So a frictionless organization sees fewer and fewer of those extra costs, sometimes called hidden costs, over time.
I appreciate that. Bill, last question, and then we can wrap up, because as I know we've got your time and it's limited. So I appreciate that again. But
yes.
Who does customer experience well? From industries or companies, who should we be looking at as best in class?
Yeah, it's interesting. What my co-author David Jaffe and I cast the net pretty broadly around the world, and we found organizations that were doing really well, even some in the public sector. So example, the government of Estonia does a really good job with social support for its citizens in terms of giving them preemptive advice when they need to register for something, or other advice when there's a natural disaster or a problem that they have to fix. The companies that we found, even large ones like E.ON, the energy supplier out of Germany, has done some terrific things. And so we find frictionless organizations are doing parts of what we talk about in the book. Very few do all of it. We think Amazon does quite a bit of it. Apple does quite a bit of it in terms of anticipating needs, in terms of providing really slick and useful digital solutions. We talk about a company out of Australia, New Zealand called Xero, spelled Xero. That's a wonderful web-based tool for small businesses to do accounting software. Some really terrific solutions that they're doing as well. Some of the telcos are doing a pretty good job. T-Mobile in the USA has won all sorts of awards for their solutions. Vodafone out of London is striving to do the same thing with a lot of frictionless programs that they put in place. So it's interesting. It goes across a wide number of sectors or industries. It really comes down to, is the company really committed to making sure that it attacks the root of the friction? And that's what we tried to pick up when we did the interviews. Uber, we had some great conversations with them, thought they were doing a terrific job. They think any contact coming into their support center is a defect, and they want to reduce those defects dramatically every time they come in, whether it's for Uber Eats or whether it's for the Uber rideshare. So those are some examples. We have about 30 or 40 companies in the book that we cite, and we're picking up more and more examples since then, which is exciting, so that we can see that this is going to be maybe some sort of a movement after all.
Final words for everybody watching this that hasn't read the book, that should read the book, The Frictionless Organization.
Yeah.
Any final messages on the topic of becoming frictionless or delivering world-class customer service or feedback?
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking at the end, because the one quick question is, customer service and customer support is simply the organization that receives these problems and tries to fix them or tries to handle them. The actual fix, the actual long-term cure, requires what we call a whole of business solution, meaning product design, marketing folks, IT, even legal and other organizations. Everyone's got to come together to make sure the customer experience gets better. Customer support or customer service might collect some of this data and report it back, but it's got to be everyone else who chimes in and joins in to really make sure it works well. And that whole of business is essential to make frictionless happen.